Well, first of all, welcome everybody. It's been a while since we've been together. Some of you I've seen in other circles, others I haven't seen at all since March. So before we get into everything, certainly would like to give everybody the opportunity to do a check-in, how everybody's doing, and if you've had any challenges you wish to share. That it's been a unique time, that's for sure, that we've been dealing with. So Marilyn, you're on my screen first, so I'll start with you.
Thanks. I have actually had a couple deaths happen. A lot of people have. Interestingly enough, neither was actually COVID related, but both COVID impacted because of the funeral situations and traveling situations. My stepfather, who was like a father to me, that was here in North Carolina. So the one time I ventured out in my car to go somewhere was up in Henderson, and we went and did the homegoing and planned it and did all that. It was wonderful and beautiful, and that was fantastic. And then my aunt passed in California quite recently. I wasn't able to go out for that. Between that and getting back ready for teaching for school and all of that, those kind of things are happening. But I'm truly blessed. I'm highly favored. I'm thankful for everything. I mean, look at me. I cannot complain about anything. So I'm just really thankful, and I hope all of you are doing well as well.
Sorry to hear about your loss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pastor Chuck.
Yeah. Thank you, Natisha. Well, let's see. I serve a church, and we've had about 10 people with COVID that we know of within the life of the church. We've had one death, and I actually we did his memorial service. He was an older man, a wonderful veteran, and a colonel in the United States Army, and we had a great celebration for him a couple of Fridays ago. And let's see, these days have also offered, really to me as the primary preaching pastor of the church that I serve, has given me some really, really good opportunities to preach about racial justice. And I never hesitated to do that before, but these days are just, the Bible uses two different words for the word time. There's chronos time and there's kairos time. And chronos is chronological time, and kairos is time that is just pregnant with possibilities. And this has been one of those moments, especially around the subject of racial justice. And so we've been all after it. So
and you and your family are good? Everyone's well?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good, being able to stay away from the virus. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. What about you, Bob?
I want to say Pastor Chuck got some new neighbors.
That's right. He lives just a few houses down.
Yeah. About the time this coronavirus thing hit, we made an offer on a house, one house away from our daughter and her family. So we moved in April. It was a terrible time, but we're here and settling in, and Chuck and Karen are like, well, I can see their house from my window.
I'm waving at you, Bob.
Yeah. So we're enjoying being, it's a Matthews Plantation neighborhood. We're enjoying it a lot. And we're doing real well. I haven't missed going out very much. It's been felt real good to stay at home.
Plantation.
And Judy's well?
She's well. She's still working from home full time.
Okay.
And our two granddaughters come down the street most morning, 5 days a week, for a couple of hours, and we watch them while their parents work. So that's a challenge and a joy. One's 8 and one's 4. So
yeah.
Very energetic little girls.
Hands full. All right,
We're
good to
doing
hear. And what about you, Miss Angela?
Angela, you're muted.
Yeah, she's working on it. I can see it on her face. Let's see if she can get it undone there. Not cooperating, it looks like.
I would think Angela would know all about this Zoom stuff.
Right. She's calling in technical support. All right. Well, while she's doing that, Hazen, you want to fill the group in on how you're doing?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. I mean, watching Angela, it says host must unmute.
Oh, that'd be you, Hazen.
I know, it's back on me, man.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, host. Yeah, I've been doing well and actually been on a phone call with Hazen every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Working every day and been tremendously blessed to not have gotten the virus because I've been going in and putting in some very long hours since the beginning. So, just, hanging in there and trying to fill in and provide leadership where I need to, and very fortunate that the family's doing well also.
Good to hear. Okay, Mr. Host Hazen, that's back to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Angela. Don't take that personally. You're back on mute, but you've done it yourself. I didn't do it. It has been the strangest times ever. Is everybody being put on? Are y'all putting yourselves on mute? Because I see Angela, Chuck, and Marilyn all on mute. Y'all did it to yourself. Okay, now Bob's on mute too. Okay, good. Anyways, it's been very unusual times. I do like looking at the COVID numbers from Mecklenburg County, and they are up 211 in the last 24 hours. And that's pretty good because we got about 19,500 cases reported, and that's just over 1%. So and Angela knows all this too, we've seen big jumps of 400. So, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I see a bunch of people wearing masks. I mean, I get the sense that people in Mecklenburg County get it. And so, anyway, we got to get on top of this. I mean, we're going to ruin the economy. One thing, if nothing else, people are going to die. And we're going to ruin the economy, I guess. So Americans do seem to be ungovernable to me. I mean, I hate to be a downer. Everybody's talking about what they're thankful for, but it's weird. So it's a little bit weird. I don't know if it's authority or what it is. I don't know if it's the makeup of our Declaration of Independence. We got this Bill of Rights. By golly, nobody's going to tell me what to do, but this is an example where it's worked against us, in my humble opinion. So that's it. I'll answer any questions, but anyways, we're trudging along.
Okay. All right. And my update will be brief, but I'm well. My family's well. My team is doing very well. We did, like most other places, close our doors March 16th, and we're closed for just shy of 2 months, and have been very fortunate that since we've reopened, we have been at or above for sales in the restore. And so we are very excited to be trending the way that we are. In fact, we're on track right now to have another record-breaking month. So given everything that's happened, we're very blessed in that capacity. We were able to retain all of our staff and pay their full salaries and benefits during the closure. That was beneficial for my restore team. My admin team was able to work remote during that time, but the restore, there's nothing they can do remote. So as I said to my board of directors, it's much easier for me to replace money than it is people, and had a strong commitment to retaining the team, and we're able to do that. So we are just starting our new budget year, and I've budgeted very conservatively given we don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of months. So in the event that we find ourselves having another closure, we've prepared for that. We are in the strongest financial position we've ever been in. So I'm confident that we will weather the storm. I think, when you live your life right, things tend to go the right way, and we've done our best to do that. And so we just continue to pray that we're able to take care of our team and the families we serve and keep doing the work that we do. So it's been crazy. And for all of you that have known me for many years now, I'm real good at making decisions. It's real hard to make decisions when information changes every 15 minutes. And so that put me in a brand new place. And I didn't only have work, I had Rotary, I had the other Matthews Affordable Housing Alliance, and thank goodness Hazen and them had the town handled. I didn't have to worry about this piece, but you talk about learning to have now backup plans C and D in order so that if something like this happens again, we're better prepared. But it was challenging to say the least. So we've weathered it. We continue to do so, and so hope everything will be positive moving forward, and we'll bob and weave as we need to, and we'll adjust as necessary, and that's really all we can do. So we operate with integrity and with best intentions, and we'll just play in this game like everybody else. So glad to be here with you guys today. We know we have not been together since March. Well, actually, no, it was February, so we didn't get to meet in March. So Nikki had sent over the meeting minutes, and you guys should have received that in the email from me, which would have been from February. So if you have had a chance to review those, if you have any questions, comments, changes that might need to be made, if you could let me know that, we can make note of that. And once everyone's had a chance to look over those, if I could get a motion to approve.
Do I got to unmute y'all?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's the first time I have ever had to do this. My meetings, when I never do it this way.
I was writing notes, so I didn't even notice they were trying to talk. I'm sorry, guys. You might, is it maybe with the town, it has an added security, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, there's Angela. Angela, I didn't. Oh, yeah,
Move approval.
All right, that's Angela. Can I get a second? I'll take a hands up. All right, Bob, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, got it. So what we thought would be helpful is to get an update from both Hazen and from Angela. And I wanted to circle back with Hazen after that to talk about we had done the interviews for potential new committee members. So just to follow up on that later. And then I would like us, after we've discussed those other, as it relates to any other business, to talk about something Chucky alluded to, and just kind of where we are currently in our nation as it relates to race relations, and how we might, as a committee, be able to capitalize on some of the movement that we've seen happen over the last several months, and how we might be able to benefit the town in helping move some of those conversations and actions forward. So with that, Hazen, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
Okay, great. All right, so we have been busy. I mean, it's kind of logical, but I think one of the things we can be thankful for is we've had several walks and demonstrations and things like that, but they've all been very peaceful and supportive and I guess easy, maybe, as opposed to what you see across the country and how hard that is on the communities and everybody involved, right? So, I broke this down into a couple things. One of things I'm doing personally, what we've done from an HR standpoint, what the police has done, what the town's done, and maybe an idea for the community. But so what I've done is I've watched the entire George Floyd tape. I think it's whatever. Amazing crazy. I mean, you'll go through the emotions, that's for sure. And
You just switched cameras, Hazen. Do you know that?
you mean I shifted around? I don't know if I did Maryland or not.
Yeah, you were in another camera, and now you're in this camera. Different angle.
Okay. Well, Maryland can see us. I mean, hear us.
I can see you. I can see in here.
Okay.
Okay. We just can't see you. Just know that.
I got it.
So it's been 60 days since George Floyd's death, a little bit over. And so I've begun meeting with all of our African-American employees really to kind of hear their stories, see where they're at, and, just get a feeling understanding of what it's like to be in their shoes. And then myself and some of the staff are going to speak at the Race Matters in Matthews event on August 18th. So kind of on the HR front, human resources, we have been talking to the Race Matters juvenile justice folks. I think the biggest dilemma is Zoom meetings versus face-to-face. This is such an important topic. I don't like the idea of doing this Zoom-wise. I mean, I think we could miscommunicate, and I think for me at least, particularly, I like seeing everybody's body language, the whole 9 yards, so I can empathize with them or disagree with them if I've got to disagree. So, but how long do you wait? So that's kind of a issue for us. Small groups, we want to do it in small groups. And then in the meantime, like if this could get worse, what do you need to do something? And I'd say we do. Do we need to do something Zoom-wise, realizing, okay, it's not going to get you as where as you want to go, but you need to do something. And then I think the thing that I think we've done the best on is the police department. The chief has been very responsive. He talked to the town board about 8 Can't Wait, really explained like the George Floyd thing on the neck, and how wrong that was. And I felt like he did a really good job talking about the 8 Can't Wait and also explaining the things we don't do. And I mean, it made me feel comfortable. I think it made the board feel comfortable. And then I think we have very good leadership that, this is a bunch of cowboys out here, whatever, doing their thing. So that made me feel good. He also did a very thorough presentation on June 22nd about a whole bunch of things like internal affairs. How do we investigate things in ourselves? The demographic makeup of the department. So that's, I can send that to anybody that wants it. And then last night, at last night's meeting, the board voted or was in agreement to move forward on a police advisory committee. Raleigh's got one of these. Charlotte's is different from what we're talking about, but he's going to bring that back, kind of the details of that on August 10th, and I expect the board will approve that. Citizen Police Advisory Committee. And then we are working toward, and this is a new initiative as well, something called CALEA. I'm sure Charlotte's already a CALEA, but it's a nationally accredited program that really your policies and procedures, experts come in from around the country and make sure you're doing kind of best in class as kind of a check and balance. And what I think as a result of George Floyd and, what's going on in the world, country today, CALEA is going to be on the cutting edge of that. I don't know if they're on the cutting edge today, but I fully expect them to now, okay, now you got to relook at your policies and here's how you can be the best. The next one is the town board. I don't know if this is directly related to George Floyd but the town has been in lockstep with Mecklenburg County and Charlotte in all the, restrictions. Not all the towns have been that way. In particular, Huntersville, Cornelius, and Pineville. I like it that we are marching along with Charlotte. I think it's easier to enforce too, by the way. We did give we sent out some information to the town board about the racial makeup of the current staff, current organization, and then also what's happened in the last 5 years, kind of as a snapshot. I do think when the board's had some discussions about themselves going through Race Matters juvenile justice training as a group. We also approved a proclamation supporting the police department, and it's a really delicate balance, but we have not seen any bad behavior from the police department, and they're very sensitive, and maybe anybody would be, of kind of feeling attacked, I guess. So we have told them and did a proclamation that everything we've seen, they have acted and behaved in an ethical manner, and they need to continue it, obviously, but to try to, kind of keep up the good work, right? People meet your expectations or rise up to your expectations. You're doing good, keep it up. And then the last thing I would say, and maybe it's a discussion for the group, and I'd love to see CDC kind of lead this, is some kind of group like Race Matters Juvenile Justice Training for the community. Certainly voluntary, but if 150 people showed up, we broke up into 14 groups of 10 or whatever it was, I think that would be fun. It seems like it marries up to what the churches have been doing. I think it would be a fun exercise for a community like Matthews. So I know I talked a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I will comment that I've been very pleased with the response that I've seen from the town. I think one of the things that's in our benefit with our police department is because we are smaller, there is a different level of transparency than you see in a larger metro area. And so I think from a faith and partnership standpoint, it's easier than when you look at like a Charlotte or larger area. And so I've been pleased with the response and acknowledgement from the town. And I'm glad to hear what you shared about the board and their desire to take some things a little bit further to educate themselves as well. And I think with the incident, what we saw, and I know we've talked about this a bit in our Rotary Club, Hazen, is, we've been hearing this for years. This is not a new story that we're hearing, but what happened this time is people saw it with their own eyes. And so there was no denying it. There was no changing the story. There was, even though they tried to victimize the victim, it was what it was. And so I think that was just, people were already in a heightened emotional state, having been home and dealing with COVID and just with life in disarray, that I think it was traumatic across the board, as it should have been. And so it started a different type of dialogue, and different people have stepped up to acknowledge and own that many really didn't think things like that were happening. So horrible that it happened, for Mr. Floyd, his family, and for the country. And I think it's provided us with the opportunity. It's given us a stepping stone to actually move some of this forward. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have questions for Hazen or comments for Hazen?
Hazen, may I ask a couple of questions? I'm just delighted to know that you've been reaching out to the employees. It sounds like you've been inviting buy-in and advice from people of color and listening with real humility. What have you been hearing in those conversations?
I love that question. Let me turn on the lights. So let me give you two really, I think, cool examples. So one of them is our employee who's 63 years old and grew up in Eastern North Carolina. And I lived in Eastern North Carolina, really in Northeastern North Carolina, Southeastern North Carolina, and 63 years old, 3 years older than me, Elizabethtown. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the state of North Carolina. He said he remembered when he was 7, 8, and 9 going to the movie theater. I don't think he didn't say there was a black and white entrance, but he said he and other African Americans sat upstairs. This is 1953, right? This is 1967, 1968. And, anyways, we talked about a lot of other things, but I was just like, oh crap, it's not like your grandfather's telling you this, or somebody's, that's passed away or something that you hear the story. And then the second conversation I'll share with you guys is a part-time employee that grew up here in Matthews, and she went to high school at Butler, and she went to UNCW. She's getting her master's degree, and she's working part-time for us. And she says she was raised in a privileged household, and that she had no awareness, I guess. She realizes she was in a bubble. She says she has many, many white friends that are really more upset. Like, I guess she just like, her brother is more liberal than she is, it's kind of a strong, more in tune, I guess. And she kind of recognized, like, she like wasn't tuned in, and she's become much more tuned in. And, like her accent or whatever, her vernacular, she says people tell her she talks white. So, it's kind of interesting to hear these microaggressions, like, what the hell's that? What is that supposed to mean? But it was, I don't know. It was fun to see two different ends of the spectrum, two valid viewpoints. And so it was good stuff.
Would you think, Hazen, that right now, these days, that the town of Matthews would be prioritizing anti-racism efforts?
I would are you saying like the board passing policies for anti-racism? Or are you saying the HR policies would be anti-racism? Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think it's probably a both and, but the board's one thing, but you're over here and you're leading 150, 160 people over here. And so let's think about that level right there for just a moment.
So I mean, maybe this won't answer your question, but the people I deal with, or when I keep my ears open around town, I don't hear racist comments. I don't hear things that I would consider remotely racist. What I think is fascinating is implicit bias. I think that's a really fascinating thing that we all got to bring to the table, all of us. And in fact, the young lady I was talking to, she and I kind of touched on that, and she suffers from it too. But so I think that's the whatever the right word would be, the interesting dialogue. But I don't know if that's what you would consider anti-racism when you say anti-racism, Chuck.
Well, in my mind, it's all of those things. Are we paying attention to bias, microaggressions, racism? Are we doing the kinds of efforts at training our people? And that's where I want to engage you. Are we being really intentional? Again, the board's one thing.
Right.
The board's one thing, but you're over here and you have this opportunity to guide 160 people with your efforts. And I think I know your heart. Are we really making those efforts there?
So I think short answer is no, in the sense that we don't have a plan. And then how do you work the plan, right? I mean, I don't know if that's, you got to bring in consultants or experts, or how do you approach these topics in an appropriate manner? So I think that's where we got to flesh this out organizationally. And I do feel like the COVID has gotten away of a little bit of, not 100%, but I think it's gotten away of a little bit. So I do think we still, the organization, I guess me particularly, still has work to do on that.
Well, and possibly those are places where we can help, Hazen, because, I mean, workplaces today, I mean, the data is so sure that when they are diverse and equitable and inclusive, it just yields greater innovation and smarter teams.
Right.
But too oftentimes, organizations treat those things as checking the box, well, we'll check the box here and check the box. We've done this, we've done that. But this is an opportunity where it can all, because of the world which we live in right now, we can go to a new place where it really, we're not doing these things because we're being forced to. This is not a side project. It's not charity. But this is at the heart of who we want to be as a town and as a community.
Yeah,
we want to be diverse. We want to be equitable. We want to be inclusive.
Yeah, and diversity includes age. Like you don't need a bunch of 30 to 40-year-olds in a room together, right? You need baby boomers in there, and you need millennials.
Yeah,
there's another example of kind of the diversity texture.
Just one other question. Again, I go back to this whole image of checking the box, but do the employees of the town of Matthews, would they know why we want to be diverse, inclusive, and equitable? Because I think that's a key step in here as well. We want to do this because it helps us to be better as a community. It helps us to be, all those things that the business world likes to throw in there, like efficiency and stuff like that. If we're all those pieces together, then we will be that.
Yes, I think in my mind, Chuck, when you're asking that is like, how have I championed that to the organization, right? Like, I have not done a townwide Zoom call, right, with all the employees. I guess I'm still trying to figure it out. I like talking to people in small, like today I talked to the fire department. It's a group of 8 or 10, even when everybody's got masks on, which is a little weird, but still that I do like that much more from a connecting standpoint. But I don't know if that luxury's gone now. So I do think there's got to be, for me, I got to be intentional from a leadership standpoint, so everybody's clear of what I'm expecting. And I can't say I've done that as well as I could or should.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like that you want to, and I feel like that have really wanted to head in that direction. And I think we look to you to be able to implement those kinds of things, because I just think that's going to make us such a healthier community.
Right. I agree.
One of the things Cross and Crown Lutheran Church has done is offer a book study. I know it's kind of anyway, it's a place to start. This a Black EL Lutheran Church pastor wrote a book called Dear Church, and he talks about how the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is the whitest denomination in the U.S. It's both a love letter and an indictment to help us look at our white privilege and male privilege. And so there are like 25 people who are working their way through that. We have a Zoom meeting on Wednesdays. So that there's a lot of work to be done, and I think a lot of education that needs to happen that you think would be obvious. But this one thing that's been helpful for the people who've been there. Hazen, you talked about the past in Eastern North Carolina. Back in the late 1960s, you came down I-95 coming south. On the right, just as you cross the state line, there was a big KKK sign. I don't know where
from Virginia into North Carolina?
Virginia to North Carolina. It was just, I've got a photograph of it somewhere. This guy on a horse and a cape and all. It's just just pretty amazing. And that's not that, for me, that's not that long ago.
I think I remember, Bob, a KKK march in the town of Matthews back in the 1980s.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think I was around, and I remember something along those lines. And so,
well, I've said I'd like to live in a community where a group like that would say, "Well, there's just no point in having a march there."
yeah,
Let's skip that one.
that's right.
And Hazen, I think with what Bob just alluded to, when you think about which direction is right and how do you start an in-person versus Zoom, and we've got to work within the dynamics we've been given right now. But I like the idea too of the smaller group conversations, and so I think we have to be very mindful as we continue to move forward in this effort that we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And so even if it is in those smaller pockets where we're having those conversations, I think that that's very beneficial, because then they're going to share that with somebody, and then it's going to have a domino effect. So I think sometimes we get lost, and almost like with our affordable housing, right? The problem's too big to solve. Well, from that, my mantra is now inaction is not an option. And I feel the same about this. And so we know it's going to take effort. We know it's not going to be easy. So what are those small pockets we can be touching as we work to have a more collective effort across the board? So I encourage you, because I think I do know your heart and your head as a businessman and a leader, to do some of that small pocket work, because that's probably what's going to be easiest in the beginning as this momentum builds. So I certainly say, don't look at the big picture, right, for where we want to get to, but what's manageable and palatable in this moment where you can have those touches.
Yeah.
And if and Hazen, if if we could help in participating and shaping a plan for the town of Matthews, we want to be right. We'd love to be in the middle of that if that would be your desire.
Any other questions or comments for Hazen?
Marilyn, you're quiet.
I did want to say that.
And processing. Go ahead, Chuck.
I just did want to say, this, Hazen, as you were describing that delicate balance with law enforcement and some of the matters that are taking place. This would have been our 5th year to have done an emphasis in the town of Matthews called Hug a Cop. You've heard us use that, and we've tried to get law enforcement around so that we could say thank you to them. Well, we're not having it this year due to the virus.
No hugging going on now.
What you say? Yeah, not much hugging going on at all, Bob. But I did want you to know that 5 of the area churches have come together and put together a pool of money, a pretty good size of pool of money, in which I think maybe the last meeting in August for the town council to come, and our hope is to give all 60 employees of the police department a gift certificate.
Wow, that's beautiful. And they didn't get a raise this year, so they're going to appreciate it. Well, they haven't got one yet. Hopefully they're going to get one at mid-year, January 1st, but because of COVID, they didn't get raises.
Yeah. So hold that under your hat. We're working on that, and hopefully that'll happen by the end of the month.
Good.
Very cool. All right, Miss Angela.
Well, the Charlotte experience has been quite different. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, it's been a time of personal conflict, mainly because on one hand, when I look at what happened to George Floyd, makes me very, very angry to see a human being lose their life in that manner. And then on the other side, I am a local government employee with CMPD in my portfolio. And so what happened to me is that I had a whole lot of emotion around what was happening nationally, but also what was happening locally in Charlotte as it relates to the protest. And just to give you a little bit, a different take on my over 32-year career with this city, and I've said this often, the Lord has placed me in positions over the years where I see things that are impacting our employees, and I'm the one that is in the position to speak up about it. And that has happened my whole career. And most of that has happened while I was working in Charlotte Water. And so there were things like in the 90s when I went to Charlotte Water, you wouldn't believe this. Well, I went to Charlotte Water in 88, but in 92, when I went to the field group, the white men and the black men used separate bathrooms. That was 1992.
Whoa.
Okay, 1992. All right. And so I have had this career in water where I felt like my calling was to make sure that the folks under my leadership were treated appropriately and treated fairly. And what I've always told the folks in water is that I really couldn't change what happened in the past, but that on Angela's watch, things would be done fairly and equitably. Okay, so back to what happened after the George Floyd. So true to my style, and this is, just kind of how I work things. I worked 9 consecutive nights in the CMPD command center during the protest. So I saw it, like firsthand. One night I even got in a car, I ain't gonna call it a cop car, it's an SUV, and went out to the warehouse, and I got to see and meet the SWAT team and the officers, the civil unrest units. And I'm telling you, I've just never experienced anything or seen anything with my own eyes as I saw during the protest. And what bothered me was the narrative. What happened to Mr. Floyd was awful. It was absolutely awful. And those police officers were dead wrong. What happened in Charlotte is that anger transferred itself to a whole group of people who were, now I'm not saying all cops, Charlotte's got 2,500 cops. So I'm not saying all the cops are perfect. I will say that Charlotte is known to have one of the best police agencies in the country. But that anger transferred itself, I think, to a group of men and women in a way that the human cost was something that I don't think our organization really talked about. And let me give you an example. I saw cops with cuts on the arms. I saw helmets being dent from where rocks and things were thrown at them. I saw in a time of COVID, I saw people spit on them. I saw we had cops injured. A lot of the, I call them firecrackers, fireworks. We had cops who were in the hospital with firecrackers being thrown on their skin and their eyes.
Mm.
And so, and that story didn't get out, wasn't told. And really, it was unpopular to say anything. If we want to be honest, it was unpopular to say anything positive about the police during this time. Everybody was so angry. And so the 9 consecutive nights I would work in the government center during the day, get off at 5 and walk to the police command center. And I stayed there at 12, 2 o'clock in the morning because I was looking and trying to see and trying to get a feel for what was going on. And I would go up to our cops and I would say, thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing. And I would see the eyes well up of grown men who were in this profession because they felt like they were called to protect. The stories, we had many cops to say that their children, they grew up being their children's heroes. But now they've got children saying, don't drive your car home because they were afraid for their safety. And so it struck me, and here I am again in this situation. I said, when I get over to the other side, when I cross the Jordan, I'm going to ask the good Lord, why did you say, Angela, I'm putting you here? So I went to our city manager and I said, Mr. Jones, I said, I know this is unpopular. He's being overwhelmed with the narrative from the political side. And Hazen, you're a city manager. You know how that is. You guys kind of have a foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
And I went to him. I closed his door and I said, Mr. Jones, there's a human cost here.
Yeah.
And I said, we're on the staff side. We're staff. And I told him about what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I told him about how we've got grown men not even knowing what they were going to deal with that night. Some of them, God, y'all know the gear that they wear, that it reduces oxygen, so they get dizzy wearing that gear, but they've got to keep order. And I said, Mr. Jones, I said, I understand what's happening. What happened is wrong. We don't support bad cops, but we've got some good cops that are out there working to protect this city every day, and they don't feel supported. I just, I said, with some kind of way, we've got to even it up. So we've got to tell the human story behind what happened. And he looked at me and he said, you're just talking about leadership. He said, Angela, we just got to lead. And I said, yes, sir. That's exactly what we have to do. And so, again, that's where the conflict comes in. Because there are so many people, and that they are justified in the African American community who have experienced brutality. I can't deny that. And then on the other side, here I am in a position of leadership. When you take a role of leadership, you have to lead for everybody. I can't just lead for one group of people. I have to lead for everybody. And I'm in a position where I'm out there with our police force, who some of them are out there putting their lives on the line. And some of you all saw what was going on in downtown Charlotte. And I'm with you. I understand. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you have that thing inside of you that makes you put on all this gear to protect our community. Everybody just isn't made that way. And so it's a whole nother side. You know, what I've said is I don't want to see us, and I did tell Mr. Jones, I don't want to see us commit other wrongs because of what happened to Mr. Floyd. We need to change as a nation. We need to change in our community, and everybody has a part in that. But I don't want to see us perpetuate other wrongs because we've got to resolve what is happening here racially in our community. And I could just see, I saw, as it relates to our employees, I just saw another wrong, brewing there. At 12 midnight one night, one of the captains of one of the civil defense units asked me to go downstairs. Well, first we went outside. We had cops laid out on the sidewalks. Now, y'all know how hard a sidewalk is. This is how exhausted those cops were. They were laid out on the sidewalks, flat out. Okay. And he said, Miss Charles, would you go downstairs? He said, I think it would boost the morale of our guys. And I went downstairs in the police headquarters. And down the hallways, there were cops laid out. They were just totally exhausted. Some of them were bike patrol. You know, some of them on bikes, some of them on motorcycles, some of them, you're in vans and you dropped off. But at 12 midnight, and I can't even remember what I said, but I said a speech to those guys, whatever it was, it was nothing but the good Lord to put those words in my mouth, because it was a standing ovation when I finished. And I can't tell you to this day what I told them. I know I meant to motivate them because I was struck personally by the sacrifice. So that, that's my story about, what was going on, and kind of giving you a little peek into the human part. Now in Charlotte, we are reimagining our police force and our policies around policing. And there is a citizens group. Folks were nominated by our council. And then we have our mayor also nominate some folks. And they are, they've done at least one or two meetings where there's a focus group to talk about policing in the Charlotte community. All of that information goes to a city council committee called the Safe Communities Committee. And our city council did not want an assistant city manager. They wanted, because it's normally my committee, they wanted the city manager. So Mr. Jones is leading that effort with our council committee. But they are looking at everything. I mean, they're looking at the policies. They're looking at, but y'all know about the incident where munitions were used, smoke was used to kind of disperse people. And so they're looking at, when our forces deploy those, and just everything around policing that's what is happening as a result of the protest. In terms of the employees, and we're thinking kind of like what Pastor Chuck said, our community relations group has started a series of, and I'm going to call them, they're like this virtual meetings where we're talking about race and other issues with employees. And that's important because, you know, we serve the public and we have to make sure that we're having those talks internally because, you know, we're made up of people, right? So the government reflects the people that it serves. And so they've started a series with our employees. The other thing that's happening in the city is because of the protections for sexual preferences, we're getting ready to do a series of training on LGBTQ. And if I left something off, didn't mean to. But because, you know, now your sexual preference is a protected class in terms of harassment. And so we're starting a series of trainings with our employees on that. And I think that's good. So, you know, we did the 8 Can't Wait, you know, like Hazen said, you got all these national certifications, but basically what Charlotte is we're saying, you know, 8 Can't Wait isn't enough. What do we need to do next such that the community has faith and trust in our, you know, in our law enforcement folks? So, you know, if I want to leave you with something, is there room for improvement? Yes, there's room for improvement. Police officers are people, just like we are. However, the narrative out there doesn't quite tell the whole story. There are people, when you say, hey, I need for you to go this way or that way, they don't do it. You know, and everybody is not, I don't know what the word to use. Everybody's not law abiding. Maybe that's the way to put it. And so when that happens, it's just something to contend with in this environment. So I'll entertain any questions. I could say, you know, a whole lot more. Politically, it's been a lot to deal with. But it was a great opportunity for me. I worked in water all those years. I'm the protest and to actually see it, you know, firsthand and to see what was happening is just something that I'll carry with me.
Angela, thank you for sharing. That was really heartfelt. I have another commitment, Natisha, that I'm going to have to slip on to.
Sure.
Okay.
So I apologize for having to leave everyone. Okay. Thank you all.
Yes, you. Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck.
Chuck.
Thank you, Angela, too, for sharing that. And what I'd love for us to do, first I want
to say,
to questions. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I think God has pretty smart to put you in the places you've been.
He has a sense of humor for sure.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
I hope you found some support for what you've done.
Yeah, I did, and earned some respect. You know, our former police chief is quite a person that has, you know, his Chief Putney. I don't know if you all ever seen him on TV, and he's got this larger than life personality, no nonsense, and he was just floored. He said he'd never experienced that type of support before in his whole career. And So I think that allowed me even to get just more rapport with the police force by just spending that time with them. So it was a good move to do that.
I think what's interesting about us as people is we're complicated, but I don't know why, like, we don't think of other people complicated. Because Angela, what I heard you is holding two things together in your brain at one time, which is the George Floyd and being totally empathetic of what that represented to the country and what we've done for centuries, right?
Yeah.
And you can be totally empathetic to that, but you can also realize that there are people in blue, in uniforms, that are also trying to do the right thing. And I don't know why this human, what is holding us back from being able to hold these concepts together and be loving or supportive of both of them and continue to move forward. But it always feels like it's good or bad. It's whatever, in black or white, and that's simply not true.
You are so true, and that was exactly where I was, and that's why I started out with saying, it was a period of conflict for me, because it's you either had to choose one or the other. Either you were with the police or you were with what happened with Floyd, and it's like, no, I see them both. And by the way, I shared my story with my sons in Hazen. That was my son who took, I don't know if you saw it, but the town of Matthews tweeted a picture of 3 teenagers delivering food to the police department. And that was my son. Yeah. And he said, and his 2 friends, and he bought that food with his own money that he gotten from graduation. And he said that my story had touched him, and that the policemen in Matthews were always so nice to him, and he wanted to do something. Yeah. And I said, go for it. And Matthews ended up tweeting the picture. So, I mean, it's just like,
yeah, it goes around. Right?
It goes around, but you're exactly right. And I didn't want to appear like I did not, as an African American, that I didn't understand and that I wasn't mad about Floyd. I am mad and I'm upset, and it was wrong. And those cops were wrong. But also, I felt some obligation and felt in my heart that we've got good officers and we've got to support them too. And I didn't see it as an either or, but I'm not sure the community was there in the beginning.
That's part of our society right now, someone's judgment, that's either for or against, there's no in between. What I just thought of as you were talking, Angela, is that empathy that you felt for the police and the way that the police themselves were feeling, but very much assaulted, victimized, right? They're the bad guys. Is there a way for that to be a teachable moment for them to have that same empathy towards African Americans who are feeling? That's their way of understanding. That is what they're feeling. We have stereotyped, we have categorized a group of people, that these people are bad, or, they're a threat, or whatever that misconception is. That same feeling that they're helping them work through understanding, as you're saying, kind of both sides. I agree. It's a gray area, because wrong is wrong. And if you're human and you have empathy, you can look at both those sides. And I think logic definitely gets lost in emotion, and rightfully so. I understand that. But how do we use that as a platform to further that? Take that feeling that they're feeling in that moment and help them understand the other side of the story, and why then that should be relevant, and accept that truth.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And many of them, including Chief Putney at the time, said what happened to Floyd was wrong. So it was like, in reality, the police and the protesters were on the same side, but you never know it.
Right. Right. And right. How do you craft that narrative for them to bridge that, right? For them to understand. And so there is no simple answer to that. But I think we're at a place where emotions and that are so raw that I can certainly say, and I might be the youngest one in the group, that in my lifetime, this is the first time that I have seen what I feel is almost a true reckoning where people truly want to move this forward.
Yes.
And so what can we, especially with the role that we're playing here with the town, how can we capitalize on that and help continue this? And so whether that's in small pockets, like I was saying to Hazen, or to lead to a larger plan. So I don't expect an answer for that on this call, but I would really love for us to go back and think about what are some of the things that we could do? What are some other towns and cities doing across the country to continue that narrative? And so it stinks that right now most everything is virtual, but I'm okay with that. I was just on a call a couple of weeks ago. It was called a group. There were 2 different calls and it had different leaders of Charlotte. The town manager might have been on it. It was called the day after conversation. And so, looking at exactly what we're talking about, the state of race relations in the country, coupled with, the economic impact that not only COVID has had, but with everything that's going on racially, how we get past that. So I think you talk about God putting you in the right place at the right time. I think we have an opportunity here. We've been presented with something. So what is that? Right. So what is our purpose in this? So I would love for us to go back and think about, brainstorm some ideas and send them to me or to Hazen. And let's really, I think it is an opportunity. So I just can't tell you exactly what it is, but I think together we could come up with some very tangible items that we could work on to help with the town. And the goal of that is, that grows outside of.
Yeah.
And if you guys want me to, I can ask Lori Canapino is our town clerk. She's very good at researching stuff. I could ask her to chase it. I think it'd be smart for others to research too, but I think we got to move the ball forward, right? And it is, timing's everything. And this is great timing. And and I think you're right. I think just like the dialogue we've had, this has been good talking, right? I'm listening to Angela's story. I mean, it's 90% of being face to face. So I think we can do something good by Zoom as well.
I agree. The only other thing I'll say that I thought was interesting in all of this is, I think it's just given the state of our nation right now, the fact that people are so emboldened, the things that had come out from so many leaders in the community that, they say what you want to say, right? Because we do have freedom of speech, but then don't be upset when that consequence smacks you in the back of the head. And so I think we saw a lot of things that were typically said behind closed doors that were just right out in the open. And I thought there would be no repercussions. I don't know. And I'm smiling because my mother always told me, think before you open your mouth, which didn't always work well for me. But as I've gotten older, it has. But once you say it, it's out there. And especially if you put it out online, it's going to get you. So it was interesting to see where some people's hearts really were. And I think that was eye-opening for some folks as well. So just interesting times.
Yeah.
Marilyn, you've been quiet. Dude, what's your thoughts? Where are you at?
Typically, my process is to process and take things in and think before I speak. That's I'm highly gifted, and that's how I process. However, I have heard a lot of cognitive dissonance conversation that's really good. I mean, we have to be that. We have to, as you labeled it, Hazen is holding 2 thoughts at one time when you're referring to Angela. And that's, of course, absolutely appropriate. Much of the conversation has been about the emotions, the people, the feeling, but the issue is the system. It's the systematic change that needs to happen. And so I don't have a lot of conversations when people are having conversations about the emotions, the feelings. They just saw the video, they're feeling this. That's a different stage. I am degreed in African studies. I'm from California. This is not my hometown. These stories about the South, I was in a Black what was called a Black nationalist organization before I moved here when I was living in Oakland. So I had to adjust myself a certain way to move from Oakland, California to Monroe, North Carolina, hearing certain kinds of conversations. So I've had to measure myself, engage myself in certain ways when I hear conversations, because I know that people have different experiences, but their hearts are wonderful. So I try to hear from all different spaces and not from other spaces, because I understand things at a certain level. But we can have these conversations. If you don't know, and from my perspective, historically, if you don't know the history of the police and that it started out as slave raids and grabbing Black people and it hasn't changed, and what justifiable homicide is, and haven't read the ISIS papers and know certain things, I need to wait and process. I am really good at situational awareness. Taking a beat of the room. I know everyone here has a good heart. No one here we're not at the same level of understanding of certain things. So Hayes and I have zero poker face. So when I was outside with the heat and the flies and the sweat and whatever, and we started talking about, I know these heavy conversations, I know I have no poker face. That's why, for no other reason but that reason, why I went to no screen, because I know me. And you'd be like, oh my God, people are talking, you see my face, like, what should I? And it's just that. So I appreciate that. I promise you, I feel everyone's heart. It's not an anger, frustration. It's not this, because that's another thing. Microaggressions for me in the environment I've worked in as a teacher, I work with 99% white women. And if I show emotion, interest, passion in this way, they're angry, they're afraid, they're this, they're that. I have to comport myself in ways I'm like, seriously, we just had lunch together, you know why? So there's a whole different level to this. So I appreciate you, sis, for being able to hold it down in a certain way and be able to take the range in a certain way that's going to be less seen as aggressive and assertive in certain ways. I get it. I have dreadlocks, I'm Afrocentric, I'm not from here. So there are going to be certain perceptions about me, and I get it, and it's okay. But when I'm another, so this may be a long-winded version. Hazy may be like, I don't know what the heck she's talking about, but I promise you, I have to sit with information. I have to sit with information when I'm in the presence of an elder who's holding it down, like Angela. From the moment we had that first meeting and she pulled out the thing and did our thing and whoop-de-whoop, shoot, was talking about her business, I know how to stay in my lane, right? She is a mother. Her children are the same age as mine. She's raising boys. The example she raised about her boys. Of course, I have examples about my son in Matthews because I want them to recognize my son. So they say, oh, that's Angela's son. Oh, that's Marilyn's son. It should be that for all boys, but we know it isn't. But that's a different kind of conversation. So I'm taking all of that in. And I know that for many people, for this first time, it's so uncomfortable to have this conversation. So I don't want to have this conversation with white males. I don't want to have this conversation with white females. I think it's important. I think Miss Jane Elliott could be a good resource for white folks to have their own personal needs. I think it's fair. And I have a whole list because they're asking me at school, can you give us resources? Can you give us this? And at first I was very resistant, but I was like, okay, if I have certain things, I can provide those things. So I think it's important to have safe spaces. There should be a whole group of, and I mean, if we need to even break down white men, then white men who have different labels, cis, this, because there are all these other different labels. So they feel everyone should have their own. I think segregation is a good thing. It could be a good thing to have those small conversations to build safety, not anti, but just to have it so that you have, and then come together like, I don't know, jigsaws as we break out and do different things. But you have to have those safe spaces so you can make a mistake, say something stupid, not feel like you're being judged, not feel like you're like being, oh my God, if I say this, I'm just racist. I don't know what to do. That's going to happen because this is a long, awkward process, and it's crazy. And right now, it's just vomiting up. It's really vomiting up, and it's uncomfortable. And I appreciate people who are being sincere. They're not sure about who's being sincere, and this is my day to day, every day. So I really am not here to judge anyone else because I still have to do my path and work together. So, but I wouldn't have signed up to be a part of this committee. I wouldn't have looked out to what the city of Matthews is doing for culture and diversity and stuck my neck out there knowing I'm still that same person 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a year ago. I want to be a part of this. I know where I live. I love my town. I get what it is. I moved here for a reason. I didn't move to West Charlotte, and I didn't move to East Charlotte. I moved to for a reason. It was 16 years ago, but it was on purpose. It was intentional. I made a sacrifice for what I wanted, and I get it. But things are bubbling up at the surface. And like I said, it's systematic, it's economic, it's not personal. It really isn't personal. And the little sister you were talking about, Hazen, the one who went to Butler, and I just started my LLC for gifted education. Because here's my new focus, because of what I've been working with for the past decade. highly gifted students and underrepresented populations, not the ones who are poor and this and that, but who are, oh, you're different, you talk white, oh, I didn't know about this was going on. That girl that you were talking about, Hazen, that's my target. That's who I need to have conversations with, because maybe her mother didn't know, or she didn't know, or her mother's trying to make a better life for her so she wouldn't have to deal with that. But you can't not know. You can't not know who Ida B. Wells is. You can't have, just because your high school teacher didn't teach you who Zora Neale Hurston is, you can't not know who she is. You can't be aware of those things. And if your mother is not giving it to you, the community's not giving it to you, you're not taking the classes to give that to you, that needs to be something that we create for that piece. So that's an ongoing something that needs to happen for, like exactly what you said, a conversation. Judgment-free zone, not to make anyone feel comfortable, but there are a whole bunch of us. I used to be a girl who resembled that remark until I went to college and as an English major, and then became an African studies major because I went from loving Shakespeare to, a Mary Baraka, and they didn't understand why in Humboldt, California. So I have a lot of things to share in different ways that I just sit and I listen and figure out what it is. But I recognize the group I'm part of. And was it Carl? I hate to forget people's names. I'm so sorry. Carl left earlier, right?
Chuck.
Chuck. Everyone's a C. Carl is my HOA board member guy. I'm sorry. But the religious aspect and that piece, and he opened it up. I was like, I wasn't sure if we're gonna tiptoe. And she was like, well, talking about racial justice. Boop, 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 boop. He jumped right in. I'm like, okay, well, that's where we'll let them talk. So that's why I was like, okay, well, let's hear what you're talking about then. But I will tell you this, in terms of microaggressions, this is something since I've been here. That whole, and I know people like, oh, it's not about words, whatever, but the concept of a plantation. When I first moved to North Carolina, the first thing that assaulted to me was the fact that there was a place called Bojangles, and it was a chicken place, and everyone thought it was normal. My experience with the image of Bojangles is traumatic, right? It takes me back to the stereotypical Mr. Bojangles with Shirley Temple and Jim Crow and all of that. The bluest eye, no one would have any idea about this unless you're a little black girl with that experience. So when I moved here, I was like, this is what we're doing? Okay. And there's just a couple things that hit me right away that I had to do a shift, right? And then raise my black son here with this shift. So I've had to, I've had a dual consciousness in a way, sort of. But like I said, I bow down when I hear sisters like Angela talking about what she's done with water and there. And no, it doesn't surprise me that there was a this only, a that only here. It kind of still happens now. It's just unspoken. When I moved here, I was at a school that was 99% black, 99% poor, 99% whatever. And I was like, wow. It's 50 years after board versus board of education, but here I am in the very same situation. So, so I have to be quiet and take it in and process to kind of adjust for where we are, where I am, and what can actually be done. But my focus is on the system, policy, not people, not feelings, not emotions, because that's in my rearview mirror. Systems, policies, systems, and policies is what needs to be focused on. So that's my 2 cents.
If Pastor Chuck was still on, he would give that an amen. I'm just going to let you know now.
Amen.
Thank you for being so candid and so raw. And you're right. It is systemic. And that goes back to what I said earlier. This is not going to be an overnight. This is not going to be easy. And owning all of those things you talked about are so very true. And so thank you. And I'm glad to have you on the committee, because I think you're going to bring a totally different element. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. Very much so.
I try to be measured, Hazen. That's why I was quiet. That's why I went blank. I'm not trying to blow up the spot.
And there's lots of concepts. Angie, you were talking fast. There's lots of concepts coming out there quickly, Marilyn. But that was good stuff.
Yes.
All right. So are we all in agreement about coming up with brainstorming some ideas of what are some of the things we can do as a group amongst ourselves and with the town to help move the dialogue forward? So let's work on that and get that again back to either myself or to Hazen. And I'm interested to see what comes out of this and what we can come up with to move this forward, because I do think that this is it's good timing for us, given what our environment has been over the last couple of years in trying to move some things forward. I think this is a door opening for us. So I'd like to see us move that forward.
If the COVID world may be a hidden blessing, this whole virtual, I mean, there's blessings in all of the things, and that part kind of can be a kind of a hidden gift.
Right. I agree with you. Hazen, just quickly, is there any update on the folks that had applied? Did we go any further with them, or that kind of dead in the water?
I got to get back with Lori. They are not interviewing. The board is not interviewing. It's y'all that are interviewing. Did y'all interview? I can't remember.
We did interview. I think we interviewed 3 candidates that night. And then what I thought was supposed to happen is then the board was going to interview.
Did y'all make recommendations?
I-
I think we did. I'll go back to my notes, but I think we did.
I was thinking there
Marilyn?
were 4 people we wanted to interview.
I was gonna say I have to go back to those notes. That was a long time ago. I do not remember.
I'll go back and check. Or I'll check that.
Okay, so I need to check on the status of the candidates.
Yes.
Okay.
I think there was, and as I'm going back there, I think we had interviewed 2, and then there was one that was supposed to be rescheduled because it was a young African-American man. It was the attorney.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
I think those were the 2 that we had. So I'll check my notes when I go to the office tomorrow and circle back. I'll shoot you an email, Hazel.
Okay.
Okay. And then as far as the rest of the committee members, any other business, anything else we need to talk about while we're on tonight?
Like the Zoom call. This was
I think,
nice.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Good job.
I agree.
Well, I will say to the group, when Marilyn went blank, I would kind of like to know, this is rhetorical, but like, was she throwing up? Was she pulling her hair out or what? But she's got the right to process it how she
No,
wants to.
initially, Hazen, I had to go to the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
So initially, I had to go to the bathroom.
TMI, Marilyn, TMI.
So then after that, when I heard the call, I was like, well, let me just keep mine so I can do my poker face though. But yeah.
Oh.
All right. So Hazen, as it relates to the town and as we move forward, is the process going to be Zoom until further notice?
I think so. I know the town board is meeting through Zoom through August.
Okay.
I don't want to be guilty of spreading the COVID, to tell you the truth.
Oh, no, I hear you. I hear you. So then if we're keeping with our regular schedule, August 25th would be our next meeting. So we can just plan on that via Zoom. And then Lori was the one who set up, or maybe
Yeah, I'm setting it up next time.
Okay.
I can do it and I won't have to do this managing. I've never done that before.
All right, so Hazen will send out that link and I'll type up, since Nikki wasn't on to take notes, I'll type up the notes that I took from the conversation tonight as the official minutes.
So you're taking the minute, you're doing the minutes?
I took notes in it, yeah.
Okay, good.
You're welcome, Hazen.
I appreciate it. I took notes too, but
Okay, so we'll get, and you can compare with mine when I send it over to you, make sure I didn't miss anything. Outside from that, then let's just plan on doing some of that brainstorming and coming up with some ideas, because I'd love to be able to discuss that when we get back together in August to see. I'll go back to and look at our strategic plan, because I think a lot of this will align with some of what we were trying to move forward. So what's the way we can weave that in to build on that dialogue? So anything else for the good of the group? No, it was good to see you all. Please be safe. It is 8:26, Hazen, and we're going to call adjournment.
All right. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Beautiful. Aye.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
great meeting. Great meeting.
Bye.